So yeah, I don't like Sonic the Hedgehog. So I wanted to elaborate on what I mean by that for a second. So as you guys know, I run a Sonic channel. The entire thing is Shadow the Hedgehog. I am a Sonic content creator, and it is very interesting that I hate Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm going to explain my reasons why and tell you all it is not exactly the case. I don't hate the Sonic character per se, but I used to. In fact, I used to hate the entire Sonic franchise, which is ironic to where everything eventually ended up. My entire career is now a Sonic content creator. Now I love this franchise, but it didn't used to be like that. I used to be the biggest, and I mean the biggest Sonic hater. I hated this franchise. I hated its games, hated everything, hated all the characters and everything. And I wanted to explain what changed, what made me go from just a typical soy boy, regular gamer into suddenly somebody that loves the Sonic franchise and cannot wait for anything new that comes out of it. Let me explain. So it goes all the way back to when I was a wee lad, when the DS and the Wii were coming out. I was a Mario fan. I am a Nintendo fanboy. I love Nintendo, especially Mario. I love the Mario games so much. I would play Mario Kart on my DS all the time, as well as Super Mario 64 on the DS. Those were my games. Those were the games that I played religiously, non-stop. But then a friend came in one day when I was at a daycare center, and they had a Sonic game. Now, we had a bit of a rivalry. Me and this childhood friend of mine, he loved Sonic and hated Mario, whereas I loved Mario and I hated Sonic. So we had this big rivalry between each other about who's better, Mario or Sonic. And this went into a giant franchise debate where we would talk about, oh, who would win in a race? I would say back then that Mario would beat Sonic in a race. Now, that's really funny because Sonic would destroy Mario, but like, I was biased back then. I was a child that was really obsessed with Mario, wanted to defend anything in the franchise, and he would always say that Sonic would win. And a lot of our rivalry stemmed from this Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games back in 2008. Everyone was playing this game back then because it was such a cool mini game collection. And I was one of those people that always chose the Mario characters, while my friend always chose the Sonic characters. It started a bit of a rivalry between us, but you know, it was all fun and games. And I don't actually think that the Sonic franchise, but let me get to that. So back then I didn't like Sonic, and I think I made that very clear. What changed my opinion on the Sonic franchise, at least a little bit, was when I had a cousin come over from my family side who had a Wii port of the game Sonic Unleashed. And let me tell you this game changed my life. Sonic Unleashed as a 8 to 9 year old was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Sonic turns beast mode. He got a werehog form, bro. He got to extend his hands. He has a darker color tone, and he has cool combat abilities. That's the coolest thing ever, dude. Like the front cover where you had Sonic and the other half werehog Sonic. It's literally that poster of Spider-Man 3 with Spider-Man being right next to Black Spider-Man. It was it activated the neurons in my brain. And as a kid, I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I just loved it. I loved every single bit of it. It was so cool. The combat was cool, and the daytime stages were great. And back then, I was like, you know what? Maybe I was a little harsh on Sonic. I kind of want to give these games another try. So during this point, my family got me the game Sonic Rush on the DS, and let me tell you, I loved this game. This was the first Sonic game I ever properly played that I genuinely loved. I spent so much time just playing through the levels, never actually playing through the Blaze stages. I'd always just play through the same 2 levels over and over again, but I loved it. I loved every single bit of what I was experiencing. The color scheme, the music, popping, everything was so cool. Sonic Rush was such a good game, and I love that game to death. Till this day, I love that game. It's still one of my favorite Sonic games of all time. And so then, because of my cousin having Sonic Unleashed on the Wii, I was like, I want to get Sonic Unleashed too. So, because I had an Xbox during the time, I was able to get Sonic Unleashed on the Xbox. And I did not like it. In fact, I really didn't like it. Now, let me explain my reasons why. The console version of Sonic Unleashed is a lot better in a multiple of different ways. The graphics are better, the gameplay is better, there's not really much frame rate issues, you get a huge open world lobby. That was really cool. But the one thing that I always say that the Wii version had over the console variant of Sonic Unleashed was that it had the ability to have Sun and Moon medals be collected depending on your performance in the level. See, with Sonic Unleashed, you can't access certain levels unless you have a certain amount of Sun and Moon medals, which you can only get while you play through the stage. Now, normally you might be asking, what's the issue with this? Well, when you play in your Werehog form, it's a lot easier to grab the medals in that stages. The stages are a lot slower. It encourages progression. So I found myself going to these areas to try and find all these like various like, you know, coins, for example, medals. Whereas in the daytime stages, you're moving so fast that you just miss a lot of the medals. So it's either one of those, you play the stages purposely slower in order to find the medals, and that was very disorienting, especially to me as an 8 to 9 year old kid. I couldn't understand it. What was I supposed to do? I didn't know these medals existed. I was, you know, young. I didn't really know how to play games back then. But I didn't like Sonic Unleashed, which is a huge shame because I loved seeing my cousin play it. Then something else happened. When I was younger, after I didn't like Sonic Unleashed, I still wanted to give Sonic games another chance. Another chance. So, the first proper Sonic game that I ever tried was Sonic.EXE. That was unfortunate. It was Sonic.EXE. That was my first foray to ever playing a Sonic game. Let me backtrack real quick bit. I have muddled up the timeline of this event. So it's actually Sonic.EXE was the first Sonic game I played, and that was the reason why I didn't like Sonic. Before anything else, before I played the Olympic Games, before I would argue with my friend over it, the first Sonic game I ever played was Sonic.EXE, and I hated that game. I could not figure out where to find the you know that level in the first stage of Sonic.EXE where you have to find the police captain. I couldn't know which one was the police captain. How was I supposed to know that the police captain was the one I was talking to? I hated that as a kid. I thought the graphics were amazing, but I just did not like it. So any foray I got into the Sonic franchise was just cursed for me. It was just absolutely cursed. But then two things happened that changed everything forever and made me love this franchise to death. On the iPod, before we used to have iPhones, we had iPod Touches, which was essentially an iPhone without a phone. There was a game called Sonic the Hedgehog 2. There was an iOS port of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, not the Christian Whitehead port, but the original Sonic 2 port for the iOS. And I loved it. I loved every single bit of it. Every time I had my iPod out, I was playing Sonic 2. The chemical plant theme was permanently engraved in my mind. It was only a light version, so it only had the first two stages. It had the variation of Green Hill Zone that's in Sonic 2, and then you have Chemical Plant Zone. And I would play them over and over again, and I loved those games. I absolutely loved them. But it was only the classic game that I liked. None of the other games really appealed to me. And then one character came along that changed everything. When I was in Toys R Us, when Toys R Us was open, I was looking at the PlayStation 2 aisle, and I saw the game Shadow the Hedgehog. And let me tell you, bro, as a kid, that front cover was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. You got a Sonic character holding a gun with an explosion behind him. How could that not be awesome? That activated all the neurons, and I was fully in. I loved Shadow the Hedgehog. That character was everything. It had my favorite colors, black and red. It had gun gameplay. I could shoot aliens. I could be evil in that game. It was the coolest thing ever. So the only Sonic things I gravitated towards in my youth was Shadow the Hedgehog and the classic Sonic games. And because of that, I never really delved deep into the Sonic franchise because there was only one Shadow the Hedgehog game. There are games with Shadow the Hedgehog in them, but there wasn't a game about him besides the first one. He was my favorite Sonic character at that point and was the reason why I wanted to try more of this franchise, but there just wasn't much. And the style of Sonic games that I liked was the classic era. So for years, I just didn't touch the franchise. But then Sonic Mania came out. And that was an amazing experience. Christian Whitehead and everyone involved in that game did a terrific job with revitalizing the classic Sonic genre. And let me tell you, that opened the floodgates. Soon I was consuming everything Sonic. I got really deep into the lore. I got really into seeing a lot of the cutscenes. I would even watch cutscene compilations from the games because I didn't own the games. I watched all of Sonic.EXE on a compilation movie. All the cutscenes melded together. I grew in love with everything this franchise represented in every single way, and I just love everything that this series has done. It was because of my past experiences that I didn't love the Sonic franchise growing up. But as I was introduced to characters like Shadow the Hedgehog, played the right games that were right for me, soon I just grew in love with this franchise. I went from being a Sonic hater to someone that adores this franchise, loves all the characters. I love all the characters that are in this franchise. I like just so many things, and I never would have realized, especially when I was younger, how this one little video game franchise was about to change my life forever. I owe so much to that blue blur, all of his friends, all the video games, all the fan-made projects online. I owe everything to this franchise for where I am today. It is genuinely amazing to me how much this franchise has changed my life. And for that alone, I'll forever appreciate it. Sonic Mania is what opened the floodgates. Shadow was the character that got me into Sonic in the first place. Those were the reasons why I went from being a Sonic hater to being someone that loves the Sonic franchise.